Welcome to Profit Sharing in the Real World. I'm your host, Danny Murphy. This podcast features commentary from Dick Erickson, founder of Sun Tire in North Florida, and author of the book Profit Sharing in the Real World, which is available at Amazon.com. Dick had 11 stores by the time he sold Sun Tire. And one of the things he did that was a unique innovation in that business was he set up a call center where he had 4 people taking all the calls for 11 stores. Dick, how did you come up with the idea to have a call center?
Thank you, Danny. I just watched, as I got in, especially my busy stores. Some are busier than others. Some of the bigger ones, they're all kind of busy, on Saturdays and stuff like that. I'm not bragging. I'm just tickled we were. But watching how the phone is being handled and then trying to figure out, how do I smooth this over? The customer, is coming in. You got 2, 3 of them showing up, and all of a sudden, 2 people in front are on the phone and trying to take care of the customer. We found out it would take, and what they had a lot of times is more questions than an emergency. They were there to get questions answered. So that point could have been handled by someone on the phone, possibly. So the thing and then that was one issue. The second issue was when the folks that answered the phone, they would get into a selling thought process. Okay, we're in the tire business, so I'm going to sell them a tire. Well, the point that I found, most of them were still asking questions on the phone, whether they walked in or not. They had some questions to be answered. And we could answer a lot of those questions on the phone. And they wanted a price. Okay, the price is important. We needed to find out the price points that we needed to work from. And usually that'd be the entry-level tire. And not vary from that. Stay with that, because that price would be resonating in their mind. I can buy that tire for $50. And you had to make sure if you said that, whatever you gave them, you lived with. That's the way it was. There was no horsing around about that. So the point was what does it take to get a visit? And answering those questions, was it more than having somebody who was a great salesman about throwing a bunch of things around? Because a lot of times you really didn't know what they really needed. They didn't know, but they had 1 or 2 things they wanted to talk about.
So by having a call center, you freed up your managers to deal with customers who were actually in the store.
Yes. Yeah, there's nothing worse than you're getting ready to, you're getting talked to by someone in the store, and you're about to finalize the deal, both the manager or the salesperson, and all of a sudden the phone starts ringing. Or you're the customer and you're ready to pay, and all of a sudden he has to leave you and go grab the phone. And now, what's crazy, what I'm talking about, Danny, other industries took this on much quicker than the tire industry did. But in my part of the United States, I don't know another company that had a call center, at least was set up the way we wanted to have it, was there to answer questions and see if there's a way to get a visit from that. All of it is above board.
So the people who answered the phones in the call center, they were really specialists at getting information to the customers and getting those customers to visit a store.
Absolutely. And they stayed on point, because I found that when it was being handled by the people in the stores, they would get off point a lot of times, and they'd be talking about things that had little of interest to maybe the customer, but they were trying to make a sale, or the special this week is such and such a thing. And that isn't what the customer called for. He called for something else. So staying on point, so you're keeping him first and foremost what his needs are, and you're trying to meet that.
So after you got your call center up and running, other owners of tire stores were curious, but they really didn't see a need to make the investment in that kind of an operation.
Well, that's what it looked like to them, I'm sure. I'm already handling my phones. Why would I invest in a separate segment for my company? That back room there is where the call center is, and that's where my number of people are in there. And what I found to be on numbers with 11 stores, we could run a call center for four dedicated people. And that didn't start with 4. And early in the mornings, it could be 1, and then move to 2. And then we could tell you exactly when the busy time was. And that's when we had the 4. But anyhow, so we had the phones were handled much more efficient. We found to quickly get to them, get to their points. And we found out what people are asking for and making sure our employees were up on it. Pricing was very important to them. We had to shop the market to make sure we were competitive in the pricing that we were giving the customer. Otherwise, it'd have been, you'd call someone else, and if their pricing was, if they were checking prices, and you didn't fall in the right deal, they don't come in. That's what they took time out of their day to call you on the phone. And if you don't meet, and so when I found out that the majority of the calls were for price, we made sure we did everything we could to have a very, very competitive price for them.
Now, also, one of the things, since they were sitting at computers, they could get if the customer didn't know the tire size, they could look up the year and the model and tell them the tire size and give them a price.
Yes. And here's another thing, not only price, they're looking at there, and that's, when can I come in? We had it that every store had appointment schedules. These 4 guys knew every store's appointments that had been, so if you took an appointment, you wrote it in, it was put on in the computer. So we could bring you in on a time that was dedicated for you. And it wasn't that they were busy running around the phone trying to figure out who's got appointments. And they could have done that at the local store, that you had one guy that just handled the phone. But remember what I just said. We had 11 stores, and under that program, you'd need 11 guys to handle the phones in busy times. Right now, we found 4 at the busiest times could handle the 11 stores.
So, Dick, you've talked to a lot of people about the call center and explained to them how it worked and how it worked well for Sun Tire. But a lot of people, they say it's a good idea. It sounds really good, but they don't do anything with it. Why do you think that was?
Well, it looks like an added part of the business that's going to cost you money. It's going to be an added expense. I already got people that can handle the phone. Well, they can, but if in a busy times, as we've talked about here, the phone gets just about out of the system. And that phone, we found 30% of our business came from the phone, 30%. Now that's a big number. And I've checked that against other industries, and that is a number that's pretty much in industries of what comes in off the phone.
Now, the interesting thing about the call center is that on the front end, it looks like a big expense, but in fact, you say that it lowered your payroll. How could that be possible?
Well, it's possible just from what I just said. 4 guys versus possibly 11. In the smaller stores we had, it wouldn't be as important to have one guy segmented that all he does is phones. But in a larger store, you could easily get into that thinking. So 4 people handling 11 stores, and then we still had to overcome the computerization of the phone, stuff like that, which the computer gave you ways to do your scheduling, told you when your busy time was for the phone, stuff like that. But then as I tracked that, within a few months, I realized we were actually lowering our payroll for the overall company. It helped the expense side of our business. Not only did we do a better job of taking care of the customer, the phone type customer, we lowered costs.
And by lowering costs, that's an improvement in profitability, which enabled you to give more to the employees. They got more out of it.
That's right. Well, and yeah, so the call center, it was a piece of the puzzle that but I can tell you, within our industry, it wasn't well taken, which I appreciate for my competitors not taking it.
Well, you've been listening to Profit Sharing in the Real World. Dick Erickson's book of the same name is available at Amazon.com. If you have a question for Dick to address in a future podcast, or if you have a story about how you've seen profit sharing work in the real world, please send an email to me, Danny Murphy. The email address is danny@successstory.biz. Thank you for listening.